What's the best job for a lazy person? Story 1. Some time ago, I was employed at a corporate office as an IT support tech, and I must say, this was probably the most lazy job I've held. I was in charge of the network systems, fixing any issues with computers and devices in the office, and making sure all operations are running smoothly. But for the most part, I was just sitting down, waiting for anything to happen. And when a ticket finally came in, it was most often something incredibly ridiculous, like a dimwit could not print something because he put the wrong printer, or a PC was not working, simply because it was unplugged. The best one? It was a guy who could not access the internet and was freaking out. He simply had his phone on airplane mode. These problems typically required less than 5 minutes to solve, and people would behave as if I had just performed a heroic act. What happened for the most part? Paid holiday. I would sit at my workstation with my fake diagnostic screen open just in case somebody passed by. But beyond that, I would be either watching Netflix or browsing Reddit or even playing games on my phone. Posture. Due to the fact that people viewed IT as some form of witchcraft, they had no doubt as to what I was doing as long as I was present at my work desk. My aversion to being micromanaged was very pronounced, and there were no attempts by colleagues to look for me with the aim of helping me operate on complex technology. It was tedious and yet encouraging at the same time monetarily. The timings were fixed, there was no tension involved, and the most challenging thing about the job was actually the act of making oneself busy when one was not actually busy, which was nearly always. Every once in a while, I would have a task a bit more complicated than others, like changing a hard drive or installing an application, but even that was not a challenge. To tell the truth, every now and then even I have feelings of remorse for having left that job. A lazy person's dream job, attractive remuneration for not much work, and a lot of free time on one's hands. Story 2. When I was in college, I took a job as a security officer for a relocation service during the weekends, and it honestly beats every other job in terms of ease of earnings. There were no activities during the weekends, hence I had the entire building to myself. I was supposed to have 2 shifts of 12 hours each, but the actual work part of that job was basically a joke. Every hour, all I was required to do was roam around in one small wing of the whole property and look for anything suspicious. Spoiler alert. There was never anything suspicious. The facility was pitch black, doors were always closed, and nothing ever changed, not even the slightest light. After my first day working on this job, I discovered that each hour consisted of 59 minutes of free time. This is why I started carrying along my laptop, snack, and even a blanket, which helped in making this work, a mini vacation. I caught up with old TV series, went for movies, read a few novels, and even did some of my homework beforehand at times. The firm had surveillance cameras within its premises, but it looked like no one was bothered to review them. As long as I gave a report at the end of my working hours with remarks such as "all is well" or "no abnormalities observed," they were very contented. The only entertainment was that one time I heard some loud banging, but it was just the movement of some boxes in the storage area. It was not even worth mentioning. There were no guests, no telephone calls, no disturbances. How to resist sleep when the building was too still at night was my greatest problem. Sometimes I would walk up and down just to keep the drowsiness at bay. To be honest, I actually felt a little bad being paid so much for so little work, but that wasn't going to stop me from cashing a paycheck. At the end of each shift, I would submit the day's log, return home, and eagerly anticipate the following weekend for the same routine. This was the best doing-nothing job I ever had. Story 3. Honestly, I always assumed that there was no way I would ever get hired for a job so well-suited for someone like myself who was consistently lazy as a hippo. But here I am as a museum gallery sitter. It all started when my roommate forwarded me a job posting saying, "This is so you." I laughed off the idea at first. It was just sit in a chair, keep an eye on the visitors, and ensure the artwork is not vandalized. That is all. But I was out of cash, so I went on and applied. The interview was not even half an interview. There was only one question. Could you remain seated and look transiently impressive for hours on end? Spoiler alert, I bagged the job. In first day always seems so magical. I was led to a small wooden stool inside an empty gallery that had dim lights and said, "This is your area. Don't leave it. Don't let anyone interact with the art." And for 6 hours straight, I did absolutely nothing but sit there. It was bizarrely calming. No annoying work phone, no barrage of emails, no manager, and her pompous attitude anywhere in sight. The most taxing part of the whole experience was maintaining some form of consciousness. Most of the time, nothing really goes on. People enter, scan the room, and exit. Every now and then, someone advances too far in front of a painting, and that's my cue to get up, which, to be honest, only entails clearing my throat in a way that conveys, "Get away." If that doesn't help, I kindly but firmly tell them, "Excuse me, please refrain from touching the artwork." This is how eventful my day gets. Better yet, no one actually looks forward to you doing anything. I can sit so perfectly still that the exhibition might as well include me as one of the artifacts on display. I can even manage to take out a book or look at my phone when there's no one watching. It's not the most thrilling job in the world, but getting paid to do nothing and only pretending to appreciate some abstract art? It is the ideal job for a lazy person like me, and I am not throwing it away anytime soon. Story 4. It has been close to 2 years since I started working as a backstage usher in a Broadway theater, and I still find it hard to process the fact that such a thing could actually exist. Work or anything of that sort is not what I'm trying to imply here, but neither am I someone who would actively seek out any strenuous or complex engagements. It is almost too good to be true how well the job fits me. I mostly have to stay available, which means I either sit in a break room waiting for someone to call me or stay close to the stage, just in case I am needed for something. In 9 out of 10 instances, there is nothing required from anyone. So it fits within my normal workday to simply find a good chair, sit back, and turn on Netflix, Hulu, or whatever series I am currently watching. The number of series I have finished is frankly mind-boggling. If the situation is particularly dire, for that is how I regard such moments of triviality, I finish a book and perhaps work on my stand-up material. Once in a while, I will get a walkie-talkie to either direct a lost patron to their seat or perform some other simple task like getting a prop for someone. But these instances are few and far between. More often, it is just me, sitting in the back and not moving as the actors and the crew get into action to put up a performance. And the benefits? Oh boy, there are no better ones. I have attended many Broadway shows from backstage wings, akin to a VIP pass getting me access to some of the legendary shows. To be honest, how is this even a job? This part, however, isn't one that people generally pay much for, much less me making a fortune. But it makes the most sense for a person like me who loves doing as little work as possible while getting as much free time as they can. Sometimes I wonder whether I will ever be able to quit, but on the other hand, why should I? They might as well be the perfect employment for the sloths that I tend to be. Story 5. While in university, I happened to come across the simplest job I have ever known, being a computer lab attendant. I thought it was too good to be true, and it was just about lying the whole day. The only real activity I had was to take my position in the laboratory and at a given interval of time for an hour, just to count the number of persons present there. That's it. At the start or end of my shift, I had to open or close the lab, which simply meant turning a few lights on, signing into a computer, and closing the doors. Take maximum in total of 15 minutes work. Am I supposed to do anything else? Not even a little. I would participate in engaging in schoolwork, browsing my social accounts on the internet, watching hundreds of movies on Netflix, or simply doing nothing. Once in a while, I would even carry in food and consider it a small social event instead. On most occasions, the lab was not that packed as well, and I can recall entire shifts where no one walked in at all. I would just be there receiving my pay, all to relax. My supervisor checked in once in a while, provided that the place looked tidy and no equipment was lost, so I was able to stay as cool as a cucumber the whole time. The funniest thing about the situation is that I think I completed more tasks while I was there than when I stayed in my dorm or the library. And there is no doubt about that. It felt so hard and yet very easy, like getting paid for being on a vacation. Even now, when I try to remember all the jobs I have had since, I can't find any that would be so comfortable for a lazy person like that one was. It was like I was an ornament in that chair. I still long for it sometimes. Story 6. I recall my time in the university. When I had to go to the office of the financial officer, it was like walking into a black hole of operational ineffectiveness. I had to change my direct deposit information and thus shot an email. A week went by and nothing turned up. I inquired status and 2 weeks later received a status, "We are working on it." Finally, I resolved to go physically. Upon walking in, there was a dude seated, chair reclined, golf on second screen, and sandwich in mouth. I asked about my request, and he let out a loud breath, fanned some documents unnecessarily, and said, "I will do it shortly." He didn't. Later on, I had an issue with reimbursement as I had attended a conference. I presumed that handing the documents over in person would resolve any issues. He grabbed it without glancing and nodded at me saying, "Thanks." I waited for months and finally obtained the payment, but the sum was incorrect. Getting it rectified? Get real. After 2 more visits to his office, I called it quits. The unfortunate part is that the man had been employed there for many years. No one appeared to mind how ineffective or how much time he wasted. It was the best placement for the indolent. There was no mechanism of culpability, no sense of urgency, and he always appeared busy. It was almost as if the entire system was orchestrated such that he would get by with bare minimum effort. Story 7. Work-wise. I yearned to find a job that would not put pressure on me, and I happened to become a security guard. Lucky, I felt like I had hit a jackpot. I was assigned to a small office complex where there was hardly any activity. Most of my work consisted of sitting behind a desk during the greater part of the shift and making candy the building a few times to check on stuff. Spoiler alert, there was nothing to check on ever. By 6 o'clock, all the employers had packed their things and left for home, which only inbound silence and a deserted building to me. At first, I thought that I would be extremely bored, but it turned out to be the laziest and the easiest thing I could ever wished for. Sometimes I would carry a book, a laptop, and even a crocheting project, because yes, I adopted the hobbies to kill boredom. Here, I was sitting, drinking Java, watching series, and occasionally looking at the security screens, which were just showing the widest screen and boring series of camera views. One time, I was on an 8-hour shift and completed a series on Netflix, and no one even said a word. I was even supposed to do patrols, but I just took a stroll around the building, checked my phone, and went back to the desk. The boss would come in any random day twice in a month, and as long as I pretended to be on the lookout, when he opened the door, everything was okay. The most unbelievable part? I got extra pay for being on duty during festivities, which implied that I was paid extra on the eve of Christmas to look after an empty building while eating the cookies and overhead a Christmas movie. I wasn't stopping rescues or anything like that, but if you wanted a job that wasn't very active, this was the best for you. Story 8. I was simply too mentally exhausted after serving in the Army, and my work experience rendered me aware that none of the conventional 9-to-5 work would suit me. I had to find a job that didn't seem to be like a hamster wheel which exhausts one's energy, and I found myself in a truck. Trust me when I say it is the best job for an introvert ready to put in minimum input and earn a good income. Most of the times, you are simply in the driver's seat with your foot on the pedal, moving along the road looking at the landscape and listening to anything wanted, be it music or audiobooks, podcasts, or even complete silence if one so wishes. It's incredibly relaxing. There is not even a single person breathing down your neck, no colleagues to engage in unnecessary small talks, no work emails to read, and no meetings to attend. Of course, there is a task or two to carry out, probably 10 to 15 minutes to offload a delivery or complete some documents, but that is a walk in the park for most occupations. The other part of the day is just driving, which is quite honestly a little cleansing. Also, the income is way better than you would imagine for such a laid-back work. I used to concern myself with the idea of getting bored with myself, but on the contrary, I've grown to appreciate being alone. It's only me, my truck, and the open road in front of me, and for a person like me who enjoys keeping everything uncomplicated, it is just right. It's not bad in the sense that it's a good job for someone who is lazing around all day. It is rather a perfect kind of job for a person who loves their quiet time. Story 9. Some time back, I came across what I would consider as the ultimate procrastinator's job by sheer luck. I operate a phone repair business while at home, and frankly, there is no looking back. It began when I busted my own screen, and I thought to myself, how about I fix it instead? Some YouTube clips later and a little bit of practice, I did it. After I repaired a friend's phone, the news reached out to people, and pretty soon I was getting requests on whether I can fix their broken screen, batteries that had died, and charging ports that were not working. It was so simple that I thought, why not commercialize it? As of now, I repair maybe 2 phones or 3 in a day at the most. For every single one, it takes me an average of 30 minutes, so that is why earnings. Also, most days I do not have what one may refer to as work schedules until after lunch. The best thing, right? No one to report to, no traveling or rush hour traffic, and if I do not want to wear real pants, then so be it. I don't even advertise, it's all word of mouth, and that keeps the workload light, which is exactly how I like it. After completing a repair or 2, I know how to use my hours more efficiently, and that means doing whatever I wish. There are days I'll watch a season of a show, play video games for half a day, or just nap without feeling bad. Some other days I will just be on social media with my phone or read some book. I earn enough to pay my bills and make my home quite enjoyable, but I won't go to any additional efforts. The truth is that I consider my laziness as a benefit. I am cool. I do not have a lot of activities in the calendar, and I organize everything in a comfortable way. It's illness-inducing. It's not difficult, and stress doesn't exist in it. So it's just right for a person like me who cannot be bothered to exert themselves more than necessary. Story 10. I have obtained what one may classify as the dream job of any individual who is fond of taking a back seat. Ultralight armoring ballistic fibers manufactured by my factory, and I must say this job is quite easy. I spend most of my time just lounging, watching a film or playing on my phone while the machines carry all the hard work. A process is performed by the machine, and as long as everything is working all right, I only monitor the equipment for the job. Every hour and a half or so, I get about 5 minutes of actual work when I need to load new packs of fiber into the machine. It's easy as pie. The next batch goes into place and the machine does the rest. But to be honest, that is pretty much all there is. Shadula is the cutest of all. We do work rotations where we first go on a floor for an hour and are relieved by a shift worker for the next hour. To put it simply, every other hour is simply leisure. And when the other guy is working his hour, I meander around the wear-out area, munching on food, or even finishing few more episodes of whatever I'm watching at the time. It makes you feel like you're actually working for half the time, but you are getting paid as if you worked throughout the day. In case you have always wished for a job that would let you be idle, this is the one. Story 11. I recall the very first instance I ever came across with the idea about occupying a position at the desks, selling or renting bowling shoes. At that time in my life, a proper employment was needed, but not much physical effort was desired to exert in the process. I did not aspire for work where running would be necessary, or worse, still work with tight schedules. In short, I wanted an easy job. One day a friend of mine who was working at the bowling alley came back and said all the work is so easy. Among other things, he was talking about shoe renting, mending, and even assisting clients with locating the correct size. I found this interesting and resolved to try it out. I kept my expectations low, but after 1 week I found out that this is precisely the job I had been wishing. The job was extremely simple. Most of the time I spent behind the counter in the back, passing out shoes and making sure everyone had the right size. If it was dead, I would either look at my phone, watch people bowl, or talk to friends. And the best thing? I did not have to do much walking. Yeah, weekends had their fair share of rush hours, but they were not extensive. Even those times, the tasks at hand were never hard. What I liked the most was the environment. The bowling center was not attention demanding, and the majority of the people visiting it were doing so to enjoy themselves. I would always zone out on Sundays, wishing for the day to end just because I was not busy dashing about. The other guys at work were nice as well. There was no one who was trying to outdo the other, to put it mildly. I will make some cash, and I will not have to do much effort when going home at the end of my shift. In any case, should you need a job or have any offers, please consider bowling shoe rental as the most ideal of these. Story 12. When I worked on an oil rig, I had to supervise the gas outlet pressure most of the time, and in retrospect, this was perhaps the most fitting position for someone like me who wasn't in need of anything extreme. The job was easy itself. Once in an hour, take a look at the pressure and report it so that it is all without an aberration. There were days when I'd sit in one place and not move for many hours. If the pressure was okay then, I'd sit down, relax, and enjoy myself. It wasn't demanding at all. The working conditions weren't so great either, standing on the rig in the sea, miles away from the country. Because of that, there were not so many distractions and interruptions that I had to face. Of course, I had to remain focused to some extent, so as not to miss any drop in pressure, but come on, those were few and far in between. It was quite a lot of sitting around. My shifts were quite extended, sometimes even 12 hours, but the durations were really short because I occupied most of the periods either engrossed in reading, listening to podcasts, or even sleeping. I could quite easily get away with doing absolutely nothing until something bad happened, but thankfully that was rarely the case. In the event that there might be a gas pressure concern, the guys below took care of it while I sat back monitoring, watching, and reporting. If everything was okay, that was it. I just continued minding my own business. There were no active participation in management or any decision-making. It was as if I was sweetly paid to watch with nothing more to do. At intervals, someone would pop in, practically inquiring how things were, but they were aware that I was just staring at the digits. To be frank, the whole job involved nothing more than babysitting a pressure gauge, which was suitable for an individual with no desire for great responsibility. I would do my shifts, bask in the peace that came with the job, and even most of the time feel that it was a mini Africa, only that there was a salary upon its conclusion.